I recently got to present a placemaking presentation in front of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee for the City of Portland. And this is going to be just an unedited 30 minutes of my presentation and then the discussion afterwards. Very grateful to Angelita Morillo, the city councilor, and really excited to see what Angelita's been doing. And I'm excited to have you watch this video. So let's get into it.
Hello, my name is Kyle Leslie Christie. I'm a landscape designer, I'm an educator, and I am a placemaking organizer here in Portland.
Kyle, hold on just a second. You have slides you're going to show us?
Yes.
Are you?
Yes, I do.
We'll need to switch over to you.
Let's do it. Are we seeing them? No, we're not.
Not quite.
Now we're seeing
Great.
them. Okay, I will be honest, this is my first time presenting to City Council, so I might be a little nervous.
You're doing great.
I did practice a lot, and I'll try and keep this short. I want to get this thing out of the way. Oh, you can't see it. Okay. Take out my notes. So, good afternoon, Chair and members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Kyle Leslie Christie. I'll save you the intro. I'm here to discuss placemaking as a path to resilience. And I think we might be all familiar with placemaking and what it is, but I want to define it. So placemaking is a collaborative, people-centered process for transforming public space, and it's a way that we activate every square foot of city land from the grassroots up. I'm here to build on work that's already happening in the city and across our neighborhoods and invite us to think a little bit bigger. If we align how we design and use our public space with our climate and equity goals, they can do far more than they do today. And I believe every space has opportunity to be essential infrastructure, cooling streets, growing food, restoring cultural plants, connecting contiguous healthy ecosystems, making neighborhoods safer and more connected. And this is going to be a deep dive. We're going to get really into it. So first we'll talk about where we are. I'll talk about placemaking as a vehicle for change, plazas and food forests as community infrastructure, proven models in Portland and beyond. We'll talk about some opportunities and I'll give you some calls to action. Let's get into it. So where we are. Portland still faces the effects of heat islands, as we were just discussing over here. Heat islands, food insecurity, inequitable tree cover, and safety concerns. And it is unfortunate that the tree canopy cover, unfortunately, does not fall historically over populations of communities of color. And that also gives us opportunities where we can embed trees. And also, as we see in this USDA food desert census data, this gives us direct maps of food deserts show inequities where we can directly address by embedding food production into public space and then empowering local communities to steward them. And I'm really excited and hopeful because there's already a lot of community momentum around transforming plazas, orchards, and basically changing our city for the better, pardon me. So street plazas, for example, from PBOT have been a great example. Placemaking, different neighborhood hubs. The City Repair Project has 30 years of, this is their map here, they've got 30 years of placemaking projects, which started from Sherritt Square, which was a unsanctioned street intersection painting, which was then approved by PBOT later on. But there's these, and then there's this underlying cultural interest in fruit production, food sovereignty on public space. And so we've had the mapping of the Portland Fruit Tree Index from the Portland Fruit Tree Project. And placemaking can be a vehicle for change in improving our city. Every plaza and greenway can be multifunctional infrastructure, cooling streets, cleaning air and water, producing food, restoring cultural plants, creating safe and welcoming places to gather. And in my profession, I install a lot of naturescapes and food forests. And so I see public space similar to having the opportunity, similar to having all the different canopy layers present in a food forest. You might have the fruit trees, you might have the vine layer, the cane berries, you might have the berry bushes, you might have the lower growing perennials and biomass accumulators, and maybe if the planted area is mulched and inoculated with edible mushrooms, you might have this whole cascade of 6 to 7 layers of food and service in like a square foot spot, maybe not a square foot, but 5 square foot spot. And so I see our public spaces having that opportunity too. Why shouldn't the shade canopy trees also be producing food? And why can't that opportunity to harvest and care for that tree, how can we then empower youth in that community to then steward that green space, create belonging, safety? These end up being upstream solutions. Placemaking gives us upstream solutions, and research shows with more street trees, fewer crimes and traffic incidents happen. And I see plazas and food forests as opportunity to become essential community infrastructure, I would say community assets. There's innumerable benefits we unlock at once when we transform underutilized land into people-centered places. In terms of safety, plazas calm traffic and put more eyes on the street. In terms of ecology, fruit and shade trees reduce heat and clean the air. Native plants support healthy ecosystems with local biodiversity. In terms of community, plazas, parks, orchards, and become gathering places for culture, art, and connection. And social and ecological returns compound over time when neighbors are involved in design and stewardship of these places. This might not be unfamiliar language to you. Now let's get into some proven models in Portland. The Arleta Triangle, we've talked about it before, it's now a square. It's a former traffic triangle converted into a public plaza with native plantings and art, and is credited with reducing adjacent gun violence in the neighborhood as part of the Safer Summers Portland effort. The Sabin Community Orchard is City of Portland land, is a right-of-way, and is one of Portland's first right-of-way food forests with more than 30 fruit trees, layered edible understory plantings, and is maintained by volunteers in the community. The Native Gathering Garden at Cooley Park was designed with indigenous elders to restore first foods while creating cultural and gathering and teaching space. Nationally, I'm really excited to share the Fitzgerald Neighborhood Revitalization Project in Detroit. The shaded areas there are vacant lots that were identified by the city, and you can see they were able to piece together a greenway between the neighborhood, a central park, different neighboring hubs. You can see there's also in the blue, there's a meadow typology. In the pink, in the salmon, there's the orchard typology, as well as different vegetative growing plots in the orange. And so this is an opportunity in which you were able to create sovereignty, you're creating culture, you're creating these neighborhood green hubs. There's a Beacon Food Forest in Seattle, which is a 7-acre food forest with fruit and nut trees, berry shrubs, open community harvest, as well as gathering places. Currently it is just under 2 acres in cultivation. And there's the Avalon Green Alley Network in Los Angeles, where alleys have been redesigned as green corridors and plazas for citrus trees, edible landscaping, and plants significant to the Latino community. And global models get even bolder. We have a whole edible neighborhood in the Netherlands, 15 hectares, with thousands of fruit trees, hundreds of edible plants, integrating food production into the values and use of that public space. Imagine, I'm going a little off script here, imagine if we had bridges over riparian areas that then gave us access to fruit trees. How would that change our relationship with public space? Maybe to our neighbor. There's the Climate Park in Denmark, which was just a previously long expanse of grass, traditional grass lawn. And now it's been transformed to a climate resilient public park with rain gardens, native trees, and plazas for gathering. In Barcelona, Barcelona's super blocks are clusters of city blocks, typically 3x3, closed to through traffic, opened as plazas with trees, gardens, and community space. And these all show how reclaiming streets and public right-of-ways can create safer, greener, and more livable neighborhoods. Now, what are some opportunities in Portland? As we've discussed today, there are numerous, I would say, ready-made pilot projects. The 21 plazas already, plus a network of greenways, bikeways, and existing placemaking projects. I suggest we test and expand street plazas and expand them, similar to the Barcelona Superblock. We should have in Portland a flagship community food forest modeled on Beacon, or maybe numerous. We should convert alleys into edible corridors like the Avalon Alleyway Project. And we should be building community ownership through self-nominated projects. My call to action to you today is to turn plazas and greenways into hubs of food security by blending the use of food security, shade equity, and safe gathering space into the use of public space design. I suggest we adopt a public fruit and edible landscaping policy so fruit trees and berry shrubs are embraced in city planting standards, and thus stewardship is a value that is instilled by our public space. I suggest we create a flagship community food forest. Many park spaces or school-adjacent spaces are prime opportunities. And we should be integrating placemaking into climate inequity goals and treating public space as essential community infrastructure, not amenities, and continue the good work of engaging community in the thoughtful redesign of our shared space. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Great presentation, all three of you up there. We have lots of hands up. So first is Councilor Koyama-Lane.
Okay, I'll try to be quick. First, this is all amazing. Thank you so much. I think you have a great champion here. I think you worked with Councilor Morillo to set a lot of this up. I think she is going to be a great person to keep working with on how we can make sure the work you're doing is supported at the city, and we're figuring out how to streamline things as needed. So stay close to her in her office. Love that. Been a huge fan of Depave for a long time, and now I'm a new fan of PDX Urban Gardens. Kyle, you did great. Your first time in front of council, you nailed it. I've seen a lot of the important work you're doing, Depave, at Sunnyside School. I've been to seen Pal Butte and gotten to have a tour of that. Thank you for all the work you're doing at the Plaza on 7th. And I appreciate these maps because I've seen them, the heat maps, and I've done the shade equity bike ride. And so I really think a lot about D1 and thinking about those inequities. And even though I've seen these maps so many times, it just really hit me to also remember D2 here, and I appreciate that you brought up redlining because that is why there's been historic underinvestment in these areas. And also this map made me think about the potential of Rocky Butte, which I think D1, D2, and D3 can all really work together there because we all kind of meet right at that spot. My wondering is how you apply this equity lens to prioritizing the projects that you're doing. I know oftentimes the community groups that have more access to resources and time to advocate are gonna apply probably in certain areas. How do you make sure that D1 and D2 are lifted up and prioritized when you're getting applications, or is there outreach that you're doing to make sure that projects are trying to push back against the inequities that redlining have resulted in?
Do you want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually, and I think was something we had to be thoughtful of really soon in our work. So oftentimes we have community members coming to us with projects. Very recently, we conducted a community needs assessment by doing very targeted outreach to congregations that primarily serve communities of color, looking at the school maps, understanding where's the distribution of these Title I schools. And really prioritizing our work there. I think during the pandemic that we made a really intentional shift to move away from volume of projects to highest impact project. So we do turn down lots of folks actually and say, no, we can't do a project here. As great as it would be, we want to reserve our capacity to support other folks. And I think to that end, we also support resources online for other folks to really take this action into their own hands.
other questions?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Great. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming before us today, because these are all two new programs that I did not know anything about. But I want to go to the Portland Urban Gardens. If a constituent or community group in D1 wanted to nominate a community organization or a particular site for one of your projects, what should they do?
That's a great question. Let's chat. I would say send me an email. And I'd love to partner. I've partnered with various nonprofits in the past, Portland Placemaking Coalition, the City Repair. There's various coalitions that hold the nonprofit status if that's an issue.
Yeah. So to date, how many projects have you done in District 1?
That's a great question. I don't think I know. Yeah.
And the reason why I ask you is because in meeting with the PCEF folks, and they talked about all the projects that they were working on, and a good considerable amount of their money goes to District 2 and District 3. Very little projects went to District 1, and that may be that's where the bulk of the organizations are who deal with climate change and those kinds of things. But I'd like to see people work their way out from the city of Portland when doing these kind of projects, because it makes a difference. And I'm just looking at all the good stuff that you all have been doing. That would be great to have in District 1, in addition to the street plazas that Peabody is putting up. We oftentimes feel like we're kind of left behind, but I would like to work with you and have my staff connect us and exchange contact information. And the second question for Depave, very interesting what you do. I was wondering, do you mainly do projects with the public sector? Do you do any private sector project partnering?
Yeah, so most of our projects are, again, they're going to be in public spaces. So
Okay.
I think the closest we've done has been work with like the Boys and Girls Club. But again, that's
Okay.
like a nonprofit. We do try to, again, make these projects as most publicly accessible as possible. So by having them in public land already, it makes it more accessible for community members.
Exactly. So I was looking at your strategic plan, because I always try to go under the hood a little bit.
Yeah, that's good.
And so goal 5, you have expand and diversify sources of funding to deliver on your mission. And the first one was A, diversify income streams away from current over-reliance on government grants.
Totally.
So how do you plan, so if you're not going to get government grants, what is your plan to reach out? Are there specific private sector organizations that you're going to be looking to partner with?
Yeah.
What does that look like?
No, this is a great question. So I just want to clarify, it's not like we don't want the government grants. It's very much this recognition that we're in a very uncertain and unstable funding time, both locally and at a federal level. And I think Councilor Lane mentioned, we did a recent project with the Sunnyside School, and this was actually one of our first pilots for a fee-for-service model. So recognizing that there is like so much need for this type of work in the city, that if we can find capacity in our own staff to do additional projects in a year, could we work a model where we're charging a fee for the service provided? So essentially having more affluent sites subsidizing work that can happen in communities where there is more need.
Exactly. And your second point was to secure strategic multi-year partnerships with national networks and regional institutions.
Correct.
And I was trying to think, well, who could they partner with that would fit that description? So I'm going to ask you the question, who could you partner with that would fit that description?
That's why it's in the strategic plan, I think. I couldn't tell you an answer off the top of my head, but I think we have been trying to do work with the Meyer Memorial Trust and a few other more private foundations.
So that's what you're thinking about, private philanthropy.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for the work that you do, both of you. It's great, and it's amazing and outstanding work.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Smith. Councilor Morillo.
Thank you all so much for being here today. It's been such a pleasure to learn from you individually and to now get to introduce you to all of my colleagues. Kyle, I actually just sent an introduction email for you and Councilor Smith with your Chief of Staff attached, so you guys can convene on what we can do in District 1, because Councilor Smith is absolutely correct. District 1 deserves some love, and especially with regards to creating more green spaces in that area of our city, so thanks for that. As we're talking about federal funding cuts, state cuts, everything, we are at the very end of that horrific assembly line of not getting any funding, and our partnering groups are also facing that. And as someone who was a SNAP policy expert before coming into City Hall, I really think about our low-income constituents who are now not going to have as much access to food, as much access to public space or places where they can be in community without having to purchase something. And so your work is really critical at this time. And I've really been thinking about food sovereignty and what it's going to take to make sure that people are going to be able to access food for free, because people really are going hungry in our city, and that's something that we don't talk a lot about. So I had a question for you, Kyle. Knowing that part of there are barriers to us planting fruit trees and food in the city, because it's my understanding, it creates a lot of maintenance costs and a lot of issues. But you and I have talked one-on-one about how people can become stewards of our land and how community can come and actually take care of it too. And I'm curious about how you have worked with community in the past to sort of activate them and get them to be stewards of these spaces so that we all have shared ownership over this.
Yeah, that's a great point. Maintenance of a food forest is different than just mowing a lawn. But there's so much more that you get from a food forest than going and mowing the lawn. So there's a huge opportunity to retool a workforce that's already caring for our street trees, watering the annual planters that maybe are supporting wildlife and biodiversity as keystone species, or maybe are just looking pretty. I think there's opportunity for there to be beautification and food security to be in one. And there's this idea, I think, to answer your question, and I think an earlier presentation brought this up, that the most successful plazas had, numerous partners, and that makes sense. When you have more groups in a space occupying it, and, there's going to be less delinquent behavior, there's going to be more positive things, right? So same with and then I also want to bring in this context of, every place that I rented in Portland, I signed up for the community garden program, signed up for a box or a plot, and every 2 years I was moving, and so I would be moving out of the city or moving out of the range that it was now good for me to go and use that space. So there's this, culture of a 5-year wait list on a community garden plot, right? And I think the community garden plots, while they do provide access, they provide access for people that have, time in their day, aren't lower income and having to pick up an extra job, aren't maybe renters that might be moving out of the neighborhood. So there's still this desire to get out and steward the land if there's this massive wait list, right? But maybe we should be thinking about these spaces or a similar community garden model less than, or less like a individual, I'm gonna have a plot and you can't harvest from it, even if I'm gone for 3 months and then you see that there's a bunch of watermelons. We should have a community space where people, maybe there are some anchor partners. There's the Urban Gleaners, there's the Portland Fruit Tree Project, there's, maybe there's a school that then has, at the Woodlawn Elementary Garden, it's a community garden that has fruit trees, so it's one of the anchor groups is the students that use it as an outdoor classroom. But also there are community gardeners there. And then also there are the people that live in the neighborhood that go and, enjoy the harvest from the fruit trees. I think if we're able to integrate culturally specific plants and then give people agency in stewarding their environment beyond an individual model, you're going to have a completely different engagement in a space. And we might see it's going to be different engagement than community gardens, where it's my plot, your plot, we're separate, versus, oh, this is a shared asset.
Thank you
I'm
so
gonna
much.
hear- yeah.
I appreciate that, and I appreciate your reminder too about the long wait lists. I know folks in my district have waited 5-8 years to get a plot that they would love to grow food, plants, whatever in, and then they, as renters, they move every 1 to 2 years. So really appreciate you highlighting that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Green.
Just briefly, because we're running up on time, but I just want to thank you all for coming today and helping us reimagine and re-envision our city. Thank you for mentioning super blocks. I really want those in our city. I think they're a big piece of the future, but it's also a land use decision. And so to get super blocks, we need to move forward on the Inner East Side for All package of code amendments, and we need to really take seriously upzoning as a very urgent thing, because that's how we're going to get the redevelopment to then allow for super blocks. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for inviting these folks here today. I really feel like you are trailblazers, that you are visionary, that you're really cutting edge, and there'll be a greater and greater need for what you're talking about. You're the V in the V formation, I like to say. There are others in town that are working on changes to streets and charrettes, and I wish you guys were involved in those things. It wasn't really that long ago that many of our families were subsistence farmers. My grandfather, in fact, my mother was born on a subsistence farm. We had much more of that. But then we've urbanized and sort of lost touch. I've had long-term concern with food insecurity, and I'm glad you're working on that. I could never understand why we're shipping in apples and blueberries from Chile when we have all those things here. I do think there is a certain amount of cultural resistance, particularly in District 4, to use some open space to do something more creative. In fact, I would just mention my HOA is very resistant when I talk to them about doing a deep paving in our parking lot or taking some of the grassy area and doing something creative with it. There's still this mindset that, that sort of British lawn kind of thing that's just stuck with us for some reason. But there's lots of land available. I think there are more partnerships in the future, but thank you so much. You're really trailblazers. Thank you for coming here today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Colleagues, thank you. It's been a great meeting. Our next meeting is October the 6th, just around the corner. We're going to have a report on the Bull Run filtration plant. We've asked our colleagues in Public Works and the Water Bureau to ground us in our current water management and conservation efforts as a part of this conversation as well. So thank you all, and with that, I will adjourn the meeting of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee.